Hello. The presentation today is looking at an individual experience in life with edema of the lower limb and venous disease and the lymphatics. So I have no declaration to declare a financial interest or gains whatsoever. So when we're looking at the objects of this, as I said, is to raise awareness of venous lymphatic disease and the impact of an individual's lives. Also, the hidden wound, which is often not discussed with people living and experiencing life with lower limb. And for me, the most important, patient empowerment and being advocate for them. So when we're looking at every day, we've got a major global problem. We have an ageing population regardless of country we live in. We're all living to a greater age due to technology, medication, lifestyle. So it's not going to go away. This problem is going to get more and more increase as population grows. But sadly, here in the UK, lower limb amputation and foot is a problem, but also obesity as well. And the community costs is a major driver and accounting for 78% of costs for patient management. Demographic challenges are out there, whether we like to admit it or not, regardless of country or government or healthcare system you're in. But we need to look at how on earth we're going to deal with these global challenges and improve an individual's quality of life, because things are going to change. We know that as you get older, they state that, anecdotally, that people over the age of 65 invariably have more than 5 prescriptions, let alone illness, comorbidity. But for me, my area of passion is the lower limb and individuals experiencing chronic edema and lymphedema and leg ulcers, and they are far, far more common than one realises. But when I look at these problems, we must never forget the impact it has. Clinical depression, social isolation, deterioration in quality of life and poor clinical outcomes. They're major key factors in this problem. And the reality is not going to go away unless we look at it. We know there's disparity everywhere, especially with the venous lymphatic limbs. The social cost for an individual is enormous. It can impact them with stigma, relationship breakdowns, leading to depression. But also the one thing that people tend to forget is the financial cost to the individual, having to travel to centres of excellence, clothing, all of these, giving up work, or albeit temporary or permanently. But also in the community, in the National Health Service in the UK, it takes time and resources, and it is very, very much a cost and efficient health service that we're trying to drive to and strive to, but sadly it's not happening at this moment in time. There's enormous pressure on clinicians, as there is a global vacancy problem. In the UK, we've got over 40,000 nurse vacancies, and yet people look at and tend to look at focusing on the wound or the lower limb as a key outcome as opposed to the whole person, that person-centred delivery. Whilst this is clearly important, of course it is, we must never lose sight that there is an individual needing our care, and that sadly does get left behind on many occasions. For me, the emotional cost is harrowing. And I think for me, this is a lady, one of my patients. I had chronic venous leg ulcers for 10 years. I'm 42, and the legs have really taken over my quality of life, and I had to give up my job. This led to depression, anxiety in every aspect of life, and my kids are resentful of me. This is the real world of living with lower limb problems. And you can see there the skin, you have cellulitis there. Immediately, if you're working, and this photograph is of a young gentleman, had to give up work for treatment, etc. And sadly, that was the start of a journey to lymphedema for him. So the impact on the individual is enormous, and we cannot forget that. Stigma, altered body image, low esteem. And for me, I always think of my late mother when she, due to her lymphatic problems, in tears when she could no longer wear her favourite shoes and had to get made for measure. I can't wear that, was her answer. It was harrowing, and that had enormous costs for her as well because she was retired and older. It's an embarrassment for many people as well. It's altered body image, and we all like to think we're perfect, but in reality none of us are, as we all get older with problems and etc. But what about dependency? Do we really think about loss of dependency? And as a patient said, the impact of this leads to severe depression, and in turn, the impact on close family and friends is heartbreaking. And yet we're striving to provide quality of life. And is that a key factor when having to wear flap knits or bandages? For me, the hidden wound is very personal for individuals, and you have to spend time and explore what their inner thoughts and feelings and emotions are. And I think these stories are self-explanatory. They're harrowing, and this is the real world that we all live in, looking and caring for our individuals in our professions. My father's leg was 3 times the size of the other one. He could no longer wear trousers or shoes and shuffled rather than walking. They need to see the person, not the problem, and not make the person the problem. That to me is a harrowing statement, because when I was in clinical posts in the community, I used to hear people say, well, we can't possibly bandage, we haven't got time. And that poor individual was not cared for appropriately, because some needed from toe to knee and toe to thigh on flap knit, and then get ready prepared to go to flap knit once the edema was done. So this is where it's really hard to measure the psychological issues that individuals live. Negative experiences. How often do we really value, the wording from our patient groups? Bandaging, how does it feel? I don't know. I've not got an edematous limb, so I can't imagine. I go out, and I'm sure all of us like to think we can go out and wear nice clothes, but for a lot of people, they can't. They've got lower limb bandages or to the thigh, and this says it all, really. I used to be tucked in bandages and given all sorts of so-called cures, which didn't do any good at all. So we've got to remember that the sleepless nights, the weight of the lower limb for some people must be harrowing or bilateral, and they can't take part. And just to go to bed at night, a lot of people have told me it has affected their personal lives greatly. These negative experiences have long-term effects on the individual, and we should never forget their families. And this lower limb lady I met when I had to get out of area, and you can see just that little curve of her knee, and she, was absolutely beside herself. She had Pseudomonas, and her quality of life was non-existent, really. She was housebound, sat there with plastic bags, because of the edema leaking. We must always remember that everyone in our care have problems, and that's why we're there as healthcare providers and delivery of a service. And I think, for me, and I've met the daughter of this gentleman, my father actually said, I think I've had it. I don't want to go on like this. What my life is going to be like, I think I'm on my way out. How negative, but not only for the individual, but for the daughter and the family to hear this. And, it's true, these statements are all there. So when we look, it's a reflection on, do we do a two-way relationship as clinicians? Do we achieve the right level of engagement with our client group? And do we truly understand their lower limb treatment and preventative care? because I truly believe sometimes that we don't due to time and pressure, etc. And this isn't going to go away. But lower limb lymphedema is a lifelong condition. Time to listen requires listening time, and how many of us in our everyday world have that? The pressure is enormous, whether it's a clinic, a hospital, or in the home. So we need to really make time, and I think, there are things that really are very, very powerful. And I think this statement that Hawkins made, to give an individual the impression you could spare him an hour and yet to make him satisfied with 5 minutes, is an invaluable gift. And I think that's where, looking at the psychological impact, we must all strive for that 5-minute value. For me, the psychosocial leg club conveys all of this. We try to do it by example of patient-centred care delivery, and to address and treat them with compassion, dignity and respect. So what are the future aims? When we look at it, we continue to face austerity, a major issue. Regardless, this is the UK I'm talking about, but it's a global issue. Financial, due to COVID especially now, it's even tighter budgets. So we need to look at working as a team, from the general practitioner to the community to the researchers. All of these people have a part to play in our care of our individuals. And to provide, for me, we should be looking collaboratively at how we address disparity, postcode lotteries for care, and look at providing available, good, high quality, lower limb care in the community. That should be a priority for all services. Person-centred care for me means exploring the individual's perception, their problems. But as I say, it requires a collaboration of multidisciplinary teams delivering a high quality service. The lymphedema service in the UK is so high in quality education and person-centred care, but the enormity of pressure is, unbelievable. So they strive to do their best, but we need to address it and get more services where we can navigate our patients to. At the moment, sadly, it's only people with cancer-related lymphedema that get treated on the health service. But for individuals to be truly, truly informed about their choice in that, we need to cascade information in a concise and understandable manner to which the individual can accept and relate to. And the lived experience, I would like to say a sincere thank you to Matt Hazeldine, who kindly shared his story. And as you can see from here, he very kindly supplied some photos, and which started off as cellulitis, ended up with a massive lower lymphatic problem. He had to spend money on, suits made to measure because of his one leg, and I thought the one at the end of 10 years was out with the old is phenomenal. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, as a multidisciplinary team member, we need to recognise that every individual in our care, young or old, has a story to tell. The fact that we may not hear their stories is only due to our extremely poor listening skills. Thank you. And thank you for listening.